Cubs are making a push. They're in the playoffs if the season ended today. We're going to talk with Dustin Riese from Cubs HQ. But before, everybody, as you hang out, be part of our channel, the Cubs baseball channel, as we march towards the postseason. And it's really easy to do. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. That's a great way of saying go Cubs. Awesome to have you on, Dustin. Kind of switching roles a little bit. I've been on your show, and now you're on mine. And you've got a great weekend planned, including Wrigley and the Bears. So how you been?
Busy, just like you. But thanks for having me on. It's good to catch up again with you.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's talk about this Cubs team. What to you is the biggest surprise, or did you expect the Cubs to be in this position at the beginning of the season?
Well, obviously, you have to point to Cody Bellinger to start. And I know when the Cubs signed him, it was more of a 1 year, $17 million flyer deal with hopes of him bouncing back to his MVP form. But when you look at his past 3 seasons, I don't think anyone expected him to come close to even getting to that point. But you look at what he's done so far this year. Obviously, he's not going to be in the MVP conversation because of Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, and some of those other guys that have MVP quality numbers. But at this point, he should be the favorite to win Comeback Player of the Year, without any question.
Oh, yeah.
He's hitting 320, which is the highest average he's had, even better than his MVP season, because I think he hit like a 314 the year that he won the MVP. Granted, the home runs are a little bit down, but he still has a shot to reach 100 RBIs, which I think he's going to get to. He's going to become the 5th player in Chicago Cubs franchise history to have 20 homers and 20 stolen bases in the season. If he gets one more stolen base, which he should be able to get that within the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And just what he's done since July 1st. The guy has 60 RBIs in basically 2 months and a week. That's almost a 200 RBI pace for an entire season. And that alone right there is MVP. Obviously, because of the start he got off to, he's not going to be in that conversation. But if he was playing the level that he's playing at right now since beginning of April, he would be in the MVP conversation because he's looking like that old player again.
Yeah, look, I love it. I didn't even think about him as Comeback Player of the Year. But you're right. I mean, after a couple of down years, he's having like an Andre Dawson type of resurgence going, back to the 80s in Cubs terms to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. And when it comes to this upcoming offseason for the Cubs, I know they have a lot of prospects in the system. I know they're going to have a lot of money coming off the books, especially with Hayward now having his deal officially be over. Hendricks is going to be a free agent after this year. Cody Bellinger needs to be priority number 1 for this team this offseason. And I'm not even talking about signing him to be center fielder because obviously with Pete Crow Armstrong right now at AAA, you don't want to kind of block his path to the majors by putting him at center. Sign Cody Bellinger to be your first baseman. He's proven that he can handle first base. He's proven that he's a Gold Glove caliber player at first base. He's the left-handed power bat that you need. He's still only 28 years old, so you can build around him for the next 4 or 5 years. If I'm the Cubs, I try to get him locked up for the next 5 years and go from there.
Yeah, look, I think they tried to sign him at the beginning of the season when they realized he was back, but he's got Scott Boras. He's going to test the market.
Yeah. And, I mean, obviously he's going to test the market because that's what Scott Boras' clients do, and I'm not going to hold it against him. But I think he's also at the point in his career now where he's been in Los Angeles. He's won in Los Angeles. But even when he was winning in Los Angeles, he never seemed like 100% happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, to me, this is the first time where you've actually seen Cody Bellinger seem comfortable, seem happy, and seem like he's having fun. And I think that's going to actually play into his free agent decision this winter, even if he does have Boras as an agent.
Yeah, look, I think that should play into it. I mean, happiness at work is a big thing for all of us, whether you're a outfield first baseman that's hitting over 300, driving in a ton of runs and is the biggest surprise in baseball, or you're just a guy just showing up at an office somewhere. I mean, you want to be happy where you work, and we all know this. Wrigley Field and the Cubs are just a special franchise. It's a special fan base, and Cody Bellinger has fit in. And I've talked about this a lot over the years where guys are in these free agent seasons and they have their best years. But I don't get the feeling that's going to be the case with Bellinger. I think that the issue was his health status, and he's back and healthy, and he's been great. All right, well, let's switch gears. You brought him up. I call him Hollywood Pete Crow Armstrong. He's one of the most electric players that I've seen come through the Cubs system since Javi Baez. And then you can put those two guys together, and there's not a whole lot of magic like these two guys bring to the diamond. And eventually I think that he'll be in the outfield patrolling, doing his Gold Glove stuff. But, Alexander Canario is another guy who's in the big leagues right now. He's great. Owen Casey is a right fielder, and he's had an MVP type of season in Double-A. Give me your take on the Cubs prospects and who to keep an eye out for.
Well, obviously, Pete Crow Armstrong is going to be number one on everybody's list. And he's pretty much shown it since day one that he stepped in the Cubs system that he's the real deal. He's their top prospect for a reason. And the Cubs traded away Javi Baez and Trevor Williams to get him for a reason. Mm-hmm. Tennessee Smokies are obviously missing him right now because they picked a bad time to go on an 8-game losing streak when they're kind of in the middle of a playoff push right now. And you've kind of seen that offense decline a little bit since he's gone to AAA. But even with the struggles that Pete Crow Armstrong has had in AAA, he's still hitting about a 260. And he just hit a grand slam the other day. So if 260 is struggling, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to take that on a daily basis. I was one of the people that wanted Pete Crow Armstrong to get called up in September, mainly because of the defensive ability that he has. You can use him as a defensive replacement. You can use him as a pinch runner. And if you want to start him 1 or 2 days a week, go ahead. But if you're kind of watching what's happened with Canario since Canario's gotten called up, he has not played. He got his first at-bat yesterday and then in the 8th inning as a pinch hit role, but he's been on the team now for, 7-8 days, and he really hasn't done anything. If you're going to call Pete Crow Armstrong up, you have to play him. And when you look at how well the Cubs are playing with the current group that they have, who would you start Pete Crow Armstrong over at this point?
Yeah.
Obviously, Bellinger can bounce between first base and center field, so you could make the case that, he should start in center field. But the Cubs are 33-12 when Mike Tauchman plays center field and leads off.
Right.
So if you're not going to play Pete Crow Armstrong, I think you should just leave him in AAA the rest of the year. Once their season ends on September 24th, and you have that 7-day window between the end of the AAA season and when the playoffs start, if you want to call him up for that last week and give him kind of his cup of coffee that they always say, go ahead and do it. But at this point, I would just leave him in AAA, let him get as many at bats as he can, and then see what he's got in spring training if he can make the team outright in spring training.
Yeah. He'll be pushing for a spot soon. And I'm with you. I thought that the Cubs might need him as a spark. You talk about his defense. I think his base running, too, would be something that would help them out a lot. But Mike Tauchman has earned the right to be on the field. And that's by when the guy plays, they win. So I'm with you on that. So who are some of the other guys in the minor league system that you would say, hey, keep an eye on this guy. I'm really excited about him.
One of them was Jordan Wicks. Obviously, Jordan Wicks is up right now, and you've seen what he's done in his 3 starts since he's been here. He's 3-0 with like a 2.1 ERA. Going back to his minor league stats, he was 7-0 with a 3.56 ERA in the minors, so he has yet to lose a game in 2023. Obviously, that's not going to continue. Otherwise, he's going to go down as the greatest pitcher that's ever pitched if he doesn't lose a game. But Jordan Wicks was one of the guys that I figured would give the Cubs some help in September. I didn't see him actually going into the rotation. I thought he might be used as that kind of long lefty, the role that Drew Smyly has right now. But then again, Drew Smyly struggled so much you had no choice but to put him in the bullpen. Cade Horton's obviously the one that I'm going to focus on a lot next year. You've seen the jumps that he's made this year, especially with him in Double-A now. You kind of get to see him more frequently. Yeah, but I think Cade Horton's going to kind of be that Pete Crow Armstrong next year where they just kind of fast track him to AAA and just be like, we're going to put you in AAA this year. We want to see what you can do. And if you're ready to go next year, you're going to get the call and you're going to be here. Ben Brown, I think, will be another one just because he's now in the bullpen at Iowa. I don't ultimately know what the future plans are for Ben Brown at this point. You've seen the stuff is great. But you've seen the inconsistency also where when he loses it quick and he loses it very badly. So I don't know kind of where his future is, if it's a starter, if it's more of a back-end reliever, stuff like that. And then obviously you have to look at Kevin Alcantara. Kevin Alcantara, to me, up until what Pete Crow Armstrong did this year, I thought Kevin Alcantara was the best prospect in the system.
Wow.
And I looked at his body type and I looked at the way he played, and he just reminded me of Alfonso Soriano, with just more of a polished approach at the plate. He's a lot more patient. Yes, he has some swing and miss in his approach because he's still only 21 years old. But when you watch how he plays, when you watch his approach at the plate, He's just a bigger version of Alfonso Soriano,
Yeah.
and if that's what you can get out of him, he's going to have a great career.
Yeah, no doubt. Ben Brown to the bullpen. I did a video a couple of days ago, and you guys can check it out if you haven't yet. I would not be surprised if Ben Brown, if the Cubs need a right-handed reliever, doesn't get an opportunity. He's healthy. He's throwing upper mid-90s, the slider. And we just saw Luke Little get called up to the big leagues, and you know what? He's done well. And some of those guys in the bullpen, it feels like the Cubs have the game on the line, their A bullpen, and then the B bullpen. And I think for the Cubs to not just get into the playoffs, but make a long run, they've got to get more guys into that A side bullpen. And Ben Brown could potentially be one of those guys.
He could be, but I think ultimately it's going to come down to Marcus Stroman. If Marcus Stroman comes back at any point in September, where do you put him? Obviously, he's a better option than Jameson Taillon right now in the rotation because Jameson Taillon's first season in Chicago has been one to forget. But when you look at Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks, Javier Assad, and Jordan Wicks, do you honestly put Marcus Stroman over one of those four right now? Especially when you look at his last 7-8 starts when he completely went south. And then if the Cubs do make the playoffs, you go with a 4-man rotation. You don't go with a 5-man rotation. Mm-hmm. Well, Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks are going to be 1 and 2. Given the way Jordan Wicks and Javier Assad pitch, they deserve to be 3 and 4. And if that's the case, I'm not going to be surprised to see Marcus Stroman go to the bullpen and be like that long reliever. It's just a role that he's not comfortable with. So I'm interested to see if he does come back in September. Do the Cubs put him in the rotation and potentially pull Jordan Wicks out of it just because of the innings limit that Jordan Wicks is at right now? Yeah. Or they basically tell Stroman, these 4 guys are our strongest options right now. You provide more value in the pen at this point.
Do you think he's coming back, though? I mean, I guess to me and what I understood was don't expect Marcus Stroman to be back. Now, I know that they're scheduling him to start to throw some bullpens, but that this injury is one that you just don't see a lot. And I mean, look, if he comes back, I think that would be a blessing for the Cubs, but I just never really considered him to be an option.
My heart says he's going to come back because I think he wants to come back. Now, whether or not the team wants him back at this point is another question. But then that brings up the question for next year. I was 100% on board with trading him in July.
Right.
Mainly because I did not expect him to pick up that option next year. But after this injury, I'm 80-20 that he's going to be back in Chicago next year.
Really?
Because I think he makes more money picking up that option than what he's going to hit on the open market given the second half that he's had. I don't see anybody giving him a 4 or 5 year deal based on his second half. And if he exercises his option, comes back and has a very good first half again, then the Cubs can potentially flip him next year while his value is still high, kind of like the similar situation that they had this year.
Yeah, really interesting. Hey, look, I'm not saying it would be bad to have Marcus Stroman on a mission to get paid. I mean, maybe that drives him to have an even better season than he was having at the beginning of this year. I mean, he was doing really well up until he got injured on that trip to out to England. Hanging out with Dustin from Cubs HQ. I'm Mick Gillespie. And again, guys, as you hang out, make sure that you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up here, the Cubs baseball channel. All right, last question for you. Give me your thoughts on the playoff race. Cubs are a game and a half as we speak right now behind Milwaukee. They're a game and a half behind Philadelphia for the top wild card spot, but they're comfortably ahead of the rest of the pack. They got a lot of games coming up with Arizona. But I think all in all, the schedule, with the way that the Cubs are playing, comes down to just them playing their type of baseball. I don't look at any of those teams on the schedule, even Atlanta on the road, and go, yeah, this is going to give the Cubs trouble. What do you think?
I think the next 10 games are ultimately going to decide if the Cubs make the playoffs, mainly because you have 7 games against the Arizona Diamondbacks. One of the teams that is chasing you, one of the teams that basically is 4 games behind you for that final wild card spot right now, where if you go 5-2 against Arizona over the next 7 meetings, you can essentially bury them with 2 weeks left in the season. But if they go 5-2 against you, then they're only 1 game behind you, and you're really fighting for your life those final 2 weeks.
Right.
Because once you get through the 4-game series with Arizona this weekend, You go to Colorado for 3, which Colorado's always a difficult place to pitch. And with Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, and Justin Steele scheduled to pitch in that series in Colorado, you don't know how Wicks and Assad are going to do in Colorado. So I'm not going to count that as an easy series either.
Yeah.
And then you go to Arizona for 3. After that, you get Colorado and Pittsburgh at home for your final homestand, which should be a much easier homestand before that end of the year trip against Atlanta and Milwaukee, which I'm kind of on board with you. I think Atlanta's going to have everything wrapped up by the final week of the season. I think they're going to have the top seed in the National League wrapped up. They're obviously going to have the East wrapped up. So I could see them kind of resting some of their players that last week of the season, which might help the Cubs out. But I think ultimately the next 10 games is going to decide the Cubs' fate, whether they're wild cards, whether they're the top wild card, the NL Central champ. So the next 10-game stretch to me is the most important stretch of the season for them at this point. Awesome.
Well, great stuff, Dustin. Let's do it again soon. Sorry that, behind the scenes, we've been trying to figure out when we could get together. But, I'll definitely come back on your show. You come back on ours, and tell everyone how they can find more information about the Cubs at Cubs HQ.
Yeah, Cubs HQ is part of Chicago Sports HQ. The Chicago Sports HQ is kind of the mothership of everything, where Bears, Bulls, and Cubs are linked together, but then they kind of branch off into their separate sites. So I do a lot of work for the Cubs, Bears, and Bulls. I'm also pretty much the minor league director for Cubs HQ, where I do daily minor league recaps to let everybody know how the minor league system's going, how the prospects and everything are going. So they can always check me out there and follow the prospects along. And it's been fun. It's been a very fun summer, and with the excitement that the Bears are having right now, it could be a very fun fall as well.
Yeah, let's hope so. That'd be great. Look, I mean, who would have thought the Cubs would be in this spot right now? I certainly didn't, but I'm glad to be wrong.
Under 500, no.
I never, ever thought that they would be this good. When you go to the trade deadline, and I'm thinking, hey, you just trade and take advantage of this market. But you know what? The players, their people, they decided that they were going to do something about it, and they have just gotten on this incredible roll, and it has been fun watching this team play day in and day out. So as a Cubs fan, I'm glad I'm wrong, because I'm so tuned in right now. It's like I can't wait for the games every night. Like, this is amazing. But what's even more amazing to me, Dustin, is that it just doesn't happen like this, where a team just decides that they're going to all of a sudden win. And look, a lot of that had to do with Bellinger getting healthy at the right time, Dansby getting healthy at the right time. But this is a serious group, and this is a group that's focused, and you dream of having a team like this to cover.
Yeah, it reminds me so much of 2015 when Joe Madden took over. Granted, they had a better record in 2015. But remember, towards the end of 2014 is when they started calling up like Javier Baez, Jorge Soler, Schwarber, and then obviously right away in 2015, Chris Bryant got called up along with all those free agent picks. You kind of saw that this year, where the first half of the year was kind of like the 2014 season, where they signed the veterans, but they signed them to short-term deals where it wasn't going to hurt them if they flipped them. But when they realized that they were better than what I think people thought they were going to be, you started calling up the young pitchers. You started calling in the young pieces. And now you're starting to see that group that Jed Hoyer's assembled the last 4 years through trades. And now you're putting yourself in a position next year where it's like, we actually have a very good core top to bottom. Now all we need to do is fill in the holes in free agency to make this the most complete roster we can.
Great stuff. Again, Dustin Riese, Cubs HQ. Hey, and again, thank you for being part of our channel. We got more videos coming your way. Like and